Exposed. Written by Suzana Thompson. Narrated by Lauren Sweet. Chapter 8. I decided to go to the library during lunch. It was what I used to do often before Addison befriended me, and I needed the time alone now after everything that had happened that morning. I felt like I hadn't really had time to catch my breath since Mason had hijacked my life with that picture. It was hard to believe that had been only 2 days ago. Things were changing so quickly that my emotions were in a constant state of flux. We had somehow gone from blackmail to kissing, and my brain was having trouble making sense of it all. My long-awaited first kiss had finally happened with Mason. That would have been a dream come true back when I was still under the delusion that he was the handsome prince of my girlish fantasies. But I didn't know how to feel about it now. It had been thrilling beyond even my imagination, but it had been with a guy who had treated me like dirt until today. How could I overlook all the crap he had put me through and kiss him like he was the only guy I wanted? My phone rang, disturbing the silence and jolting me into answering it in a hurry.
"Where are you?"
Mason demanded.
"We're going to be the last ones to get our food."
"I'm not hungry," I replied.
"Get over here,"
he ordered impatiently.
"What do you want? I'll get it for you."
"I'm not coming," I told him. "Just be with your friends like always and forget about me."
"I never forget about you,"
he said.
"So get over here or I'll have to read them the love poem you wrote me to prove to them that you're my girlfriend."
My heart started beating faster in a prelude to panic. No, he couldn't have that poem. It wasn't in the journal he had taken. I had written it on a loose sheet of paper one morning and thrown it hastily into my desk drawer. His next words confirmed that he did have it, however.
"Silver-eyed devil with a barbed tongue. From your phantom touch, my moans are wrung. Your hands replace mine in a thicket of—"
"Stop!" I yelled as I knocked over my chair in my haste to get up. "I'm coming right now."
"Already?"
he teased.
"I haven't even told you what my tongue will do to your thicket of desire. By the way, leave it unshaved so I can see it glistening with—"
"Stop!" I shrieked and heard him laughing right as the librarian came running in apparent terror that I was being attacked. Coming to a halt, she became extremely annoyed when she saw that I was unharmed and on the phone. "No talking on cell phones in here. Respect the rules or get out." "Sorry," I replied. "I'm leaving right now."
"I liked it better when you were coming,"
Mason said in my ear, and I hung up on him. Shoving my phone into my purse, I righted the chair I had knocked over and walked quickly toward the front of the library and out into the hallway. I saw Mason waiting for me as I came rushing toward the cafeteria. He looked so sharp in that tuxedo that it nearly took my breath away. There was an edge to his refinement, something that still wasn't quite tamed. Maybe it was the wolfish look in his eyes, or the coiled power in his lithe body beneath the sophisticated cut of the suit. Whatever it was conveyed on a primal level without words. That was probably why everyone believed that he was dangerous, because he exuded predatory cunning and confidence. Knowing better, I shouldn't have been fooled. But my body responded to him with a racing pulse and the simultaneous urges to flee and stand still in the mesmerizing power of his gaze. I didn't realize that I had stopped until he started moving toward me with smooth, measured steps. He seemed to hold me there with the sheer force of his will as he approached me. My heart was pounding in anticipation of another kiss as he came to a standstill in front of me.
"You are so beautiful," he said. "The most beautiful girl I've ever seen."
I was amazed by how he delivered that line like he really meant it, like he really was my fairy tale prince. Instead of kissing me like I expected him to, he moved to stand beside me and take my hand. Entering the cafeteria holding hands with Mason was a surreal experience. People stared at us as we walked through the room and up to the lunch counter. Letting go of my hand, Mason got 2 chicken sandwiches and 2 bottles of water. He paid for them and started walking toward his usual table. My steps slowed, but he noticed immediately that I was falling behind.
Come on,
He urged,
we don't have much time to eat.
balking at the thought of sitting with his friends. I protested that I already told him I wasn't hungry. You should have just gotten your lunch like usual. We don't need to sit together,
You're with me now,
he said.
so we're sitting together.
Don't you think you're taking this too far? I asked. It had occurred to me that I'd allowed paranoia to get the best of me. The principal wouldn't be keeping up with our fake relationship. Without that picture, there was nothing to investigate. He stopped walking and turned his head to look at me.
How am I taking it too far?
Pretending to your friends. Enough people saw us together to keep the rumors going for a while. We don't need to.
Pretending.
He cut in with a scowl.
Was it pretending when you kissed me?
I blushed in response and shifted my gaze away from his.
No,
He answered for me.
so we're going to show everyone that you're with me now. Let's go.
He stood there waiting, and it was drawing more attention to us. I realized that he wasn't going to move until I did, so I reluctantly started walking, and he went with me.
Hey guys,
He said as we approached his table.
you all know my girlfriend Ella.
What? Alicia exclaimed. You're not seriously bringing your hooker here to sit with us? Mason set the tray down and fixed her with a hard stare.
Don't you ever call her that again.
He swept a threatening look around at the others.
That goes for the rest of you too. Ella is with me now, and nobody is going to be spreading any more vicious lies about her.
I marveled at the show he was putting on after being the main perpetrator of those lies. Yeah, Tyler agreed, like he hadn't been trying to buy my services just a couple of days ago.
Welcome, Ella. Glad you're joining us.
I wasn't joining anything, but I sat down in the chair Mason pulled out for me as Josh echoed Tyler's sentiment. Mason sat down beside me and slid the tray toward me after taking a water bottle and one of the sandwiches. With everyone's eyes on me, I opened my water bottle for something to do and took nervous sips from it as Mason ate. So you have to stay on a diet all the time? Alicia questioned smugly. I bet you gain weight real easy. That must be so hard. I'm lucky that I have a high metabolism and can eat anything I want. That must be why you're so pleasant all the time, I replied, my dislike of her overriding my nerves about being where I didn't belong. Her eyes narrowed at me, but she couldn't call me out for my seemingly genial comment. Tell us about your whirlwind romance with Mason, she urged slyly instead. He told us that girl with him at his party was his girlfriend. I guess she didn't last long. Her implication was that I wouldn't last long either, but I was unfazed since I wasn't really with Mason. We bonded over cosplay. He was the red Power Ranger and I was the pink one. It made me see him in a whole different light, I said with enthusiasm that secretly stemmed from my excitement over improvising a way to embarrass him. There was total silence at the table as I smiled happily at Mason. His face gave nothing away as he chewed his food with his gaze locked on me.
You're shitting me,
Tyler exclaimed. Mason's stare was becoming unnerving, and I swallowed reflexively as he swallowed his food.
I was Deadpool,
he said as his gaze shifted toward Tyler.
She just mistook me for the red Power Ranger.
He shrugged, completely at ease.
I corrected her, but she's still confused.
He looked at me again.
Deadpool has swords. Remember I showed it to you.
Them, Erin, the smartest of Alicia's minions, corrected, immediately looking uncomfortable about pointing out Mason's mistake. Plural swords, she explained, a slight flush appearing on her cheeks. You said it. You showed her it.
Right,
Mason responded with a smirk. That's kind of kinky, Alicia said, actually sounding envious. Her boyfriend noticed that too.
Babe, I can dress up as a superhero if you want.
I looked resentfully at Mason. Not only had I failed to embarrass him, but he had twisted my attempt around into making it sound like it was some sexual thing we had done. He deliberately said the wrong pronoun to turn it into sexual innuendo, and Erin had played right into his hands with her book-smart but clueless emphasis on it. It, I thought, inspiration striking again, as I thought about it as the euphemism Mason intended. It's not that impressive, I said. That's why I keep forgetting about the sword. Swords, Erin automatically corrected. Tyler was laughing.
Burn!
He exclaimed with glee.
Man, she got you good. Yes,
Mason agreed, still exuding confidence and control.
I'll have to work hard, harder, to impress her.
Tyler jumped right on that one.
Yeah, man, put in some hard work.
Fortunately, the bell rang and put an end to that eye-roll-inducing conversation. I stood up to throw away my empty water bottle and uneaten sandwich, but Tyler asked if he could have it if I didn't want it. I handed him the sandwich, and Mason grabbed the tray from the table to throw away his trash and mine. I took the opportunity to leave him behind, but he still found me in the crowd exiting the cafeteria and pulled me aside to press me up against an empty table.
How hard do you want it?
He asked low in my ear, his warm breath causing goosebumps to break out on my arms. I don't want it, I told him when he pulled back to look at me, although my uneven voice didn't sound very convincing.
Really?
He challenged.
I burn for you in my dreams, and now I ignite for you in the shower. I imagine you—
Stop! My face was burning as I looked around in mortification, but there was no one near us. Most of the crowd was already out in the hallway, and there were very few people left filing out of the room.
I would love to join you in the shower, by the way,
he said. I bet you would, I retorted. Now I know why you're suddenly acting like you like me, because you found that stupid poem, and now you think I'll sleep with you.
Sleep is optional,
he quipped.
The poem isn't stupid, and it's not the reason I like you. Your other poems are more revealing about what kind of person you are.
You seriously changed your mind about me because you read my poems? I asked in disbelief. He regarded me with a speculative look.
The fact that you write poems at all was surprising, and I know they're not for a school assignment. It's something that you do on your own. I didn't expect that from you.
Because you know me so well, I stated bitterly. You never even bothered to get to know me. You just went on the attack without giving me a chance.
I'm giving you a chance now,
he said.
I thought you were like your mother, but—
You don't know my mother, I interrupted him in exasperation. You just assume things about people without knowing anything about them. You were all hell-bent on revenge and blaming her for your father's medical condition, and you blackmailed me. What kind of person does that make you?
I didn't do anything except trick you,
he replied.
I never showed that picture to anyone else, and I deleted it right away.
So that makes it okay? I demanded. You humiliated me. He scoffed.
How did I humiliate you?
Seriously? I asked. You took my clothes off and took that awful picture of me.
You took your clothes off,
he emphasized.
And that picture was hot as fuck, and you know it.
I became aware of how close we were standing, and I knew that I should move, that I should leave, but I continued to stand there as he spoke.
You know you're hotter than any other girl, don't you, Ella? You knew what seeing you like that would do to me.
He pressed himself against me.
You feel that? You feel what you do to me?
Voices startled me away from him as the next batch of students entered the cafeteria for lunch. I bolted for the exit in embarrassment, feeling completely flustered and uncomfortably aroused, although probably not as uncomfortably aroused as Mason. At least nobody could look at me and tell what was going on between my legs. I wondered how long it would take for Mason's erection to subside. That was not where my mind needed to be, especially since I was late for yet another class. I was lucky the teachers were more lenient on the first day of school. It was certainly a day of firsts for me. In the space of one morning, I'd had my first kiss and been exposed to a guy's erection for the first time. It had been so arousing to feel the hardness of it pressing against my body and to know how much he wanted me. But it was Mason, and that was the problem. If it had been any other guy, I could have considered giving in to my desire and having sex with him. Not Mason, though. Why should I give him what he wanted after how he had treated me? He had told lies about me and my mother and made everyone disrespect me. He had chased away all my friends and scared guys away from asking me out. In the meantime, he had enjoyed popularity and dated who he wanted. Thinking about it pissed me off, and that was exactly what I needed to combat the lust I felt for him. By the time I saw him again after my last class of the day, my resentment was stronger than my attraction to him.
Hey,
He said.
Let's go somewhere nice since we're all dressed up. I made us early dinner reservations at Morton's.
No, I said. I'm going home.
I'll pay,
He assured me.
I know you have to be hungry since you didn't eat anything for lunch.
I'm not going anywhere with you, I explained haughtily. Ever. His eyebrows lifted in puzzlement.
What happened now?
You happened, Mason, I told him. You treated me like crap for 3 years, and now you think you can just snap your fingers and make me forget about that. Well, that's not happening. I walked past him out the door, but he followed me.
I'm sorry.
I don't forgive you, I replied.
I'll keep apologizing until you do. I'll start with dinner, and you can tell me what else I have to do to make it up to you.
You can leave me alone. That's what you can do. I grumbled at him. Why the hell are you going this way? Isn't your car in the school parking lot?
It is, but I'm walking you to yours. You don't have a parking spot?
I had parked in the church parking lot next door to the school, which was where students who didn't have parking passes parked. I usually take the bus. I just borrowed my mom's car today because you made me wear this. I gestured at my bridesmaid dress. Another mean thing you did to me, I added.
I wore the tux to make up for it,
He said.
It wasn't easy to put it on, but I did it for you.
I refused to feel any sympathy for him for wearing his deceased father's tux, because he'd put himself in that situation. If he hadn't forced me to wear the dress, he wouldn't have been scrambling for a tux when he decided I didn't deserve his bullying. It's too little too late, I told him. You can't ever make up for all the things you did, so don't bother trying.
Of course. I'll make it up to you now that you're mine,
he declared. I came to a dead stop and turned to look at him. Who the hell said I'm yours?
You did,
he replied. That was pretend, I reminded him, just to cover our story with Mr. Delaney.
I'm not talking about what we told other people. I'm talking about what you told me when you kissed me.
When I kissed you? I questioned, thinking back on it.
You told me that you're mine.
No, I didn't, I denied.
Yes, Ella, you did. It was all in that kiss. Actions speak louder than words.
I kissed you, I admitted. but that doesn't give you any kind of claim on me. It was a moment of temporary insanity, and it won't happen again."
No, Ella, the insanity is that we've denied ourselves for this long. That's completely my fault, and I'm very sorry that I wasted so much time fighting this when you could have been mine since I met you.
"I'm glad you're finally admitting it's your fault, but it's too late to change anything. You made your choices, and you'll have to live with them. I'll never be yours now."
You're lying to yourself, Ella, but I did that for a long time too. If you won't admit you're mine, then I'll admit that I'm yours.
"That's too bad," I taunted, "because I don't want you."
That's the biggest lie of all,"
he said.
You've told me that you want me with your body and your words. You've even written a poem about it.
"Which you stole from me," I huffed, ignoring the rest of what he'd said. "I'd like it back. And my journal."
I'll give you the journal back after dinner.
I stared at him for a few seconds before my brain could comprehend his astounding audacity. "You're unbelievable," I exclaimed. "Now you're going to blackmail me into going out to dinner with you? Seriously?"
If that's what it takes to persuade you, I'd prefer it if you would accept my invitation without being unreasonable.
"And I'd prefer it if you dropped dead," I retorted. His expression darkened, and I regretted saying those particular words when I realized that it had likely reminded him of what happened to his dad. "Fine, I'll go to dinner with you," I relented instead of apologizing. "But you better give me my journal back afterwards. Today," I emphasized.
I will,
He promised.
I'll drive you to Morton's and then bring you back here to get your car.
I sighed. "Okay, my mom's not expecting me home yet anyway. She thinks I have a social life," I added resentfully. Mason turned in the opposite direction and started walking toward the school parking lot, and waited until I was again walking beside him before he replied.
You didn't miss out on much.
"That's easy for you to say," I complained. "You have friends and—"
Do I?
He interjected. Yeah. You're usually surrounded by them. Everybody wants to be your friend."
I'm surrounded by people who like free booze and always having a place to party. They also like feeling badass because they associate with a criminal. Take all of that away, and how many friends would I have?
I was taken aback by his perception of his social circle. "You don't feel like you have true friends?"
I know I don't.
He stated. I didn't know what to say to that, so we walked in silence to his car. I had been too distraught previously to notice anything beyond it being a sports car, but I wasn't surprised to realize that it was a Mustang. It was exactly the kind of car I had imagined him driving. It was black, with blue racing stripes on the hood and an image of a cobra poised to strike running up both sides of the car. Mason observed my perusal and shrugged.
It's what everyone expects from me.
I smirked. "Yeah, tell me you don't like driving this car. It's a teenage boy's wet dream." He fixed me with a steamy look.
I have better wet dreams than that, but some of them have involved you on this car.
I suddenly had a mental image of being on the hood of his car, and I chided myself for mentioning anything sexual. I had to steer clear of things like that with him. "I don't want to hear about your wet dreams," I snapped at him to cover how sexy I found the thought of him dreaming about me.
I'd rather hear about yours,
he said, and unlocked the car. I almost retorted with a hell no, but sudden inspiration to mess with him struck. "Sure," I replied as I got in the car. "Now don't interrupt me," I warned as I put on my seatbelt. "If you say one word, I'll lose my concentration and you'll ruin it."
I'll be quiet,
he promised as he started the car and put on his seatbelt.
You can close your eyes too if it helps,
he suggested. I looked at him suspiciously. "No touching. Both hands on the wheel." He smiled.
As much as I want to touch you, I don't want to crash the car. I won't touch you while I'm driving.
Okay. I settled back in my seat as he pulled out of his parking spot. By now, the lot was mostly empty of student cars, so we shortly cruised out onto the street. I took Mason's advice to close my eyes because I needed to concentrate to make up an erotic story. So, we're on the bed, I began haltingly, and, we're naked, and he's kissing me and touching me, and I'm moaning, and then he penetrates me, and I'm saying yes. Oh, yes, Josh. My eyes flew open when Mason started laughing. I eyed him in consternation, peeved that he thought it was funny when I had expected him to be mad that I was calling out Josh's name instead of his. I had deliberately decided on Josh because Mason accused me of flirting with him at his party. He also hadn't allowed him to walk me to my car.
Of course it would be Josh giving you mediocre sex,
Mason said in amusement. Why would I be calling out his name if it was mediocre? I challenged.
You wouldn't,
He replied.
but you're a virgin, so you have no idea how basic that is. A little bit of touching and then penetration. That's hardly any foreplay to speak of.
I said kissing too, I reminded him. And how do you know I'm a virgin?
I'd say the way you told that story was proof enough,
He remarked dryly. What's wrong with the way I told the story? I demanded.
Nothing. It was completely adorable.
I huffed and faced forward in annoyance. He thought my sex story was adorable. Well, fuck me.
Kissing is a good start to great sex,
He said.
You just didn't take the kissing far enough. My mouth would be all over you, and you'd be calling out my name way before penetration.
His words created unbidden images in my mind of where his mouth would be. My nipples tightened in response. Just thinking about feeling his mouth on them got me hot. Starting on this topic of conversation had been a very bad idea.
I'll lean close so you can feel my breath teasing you, building the anticipation for you. Then I'll sweep my tongue around very lightly, making you crave more contact.
My nipples were actually aching as I imagined his tongue teasing them the way he described. I'll never let you do that, I said in a tight voice. So stop talking about it.
You've already let me do that. I just haven't used that particular technique.
I looked at him in alarm. You took advantage of me while I was drunk? You said you didn't touch me.
You weren't drunk,
He countered.
unless you got drunk this morning.
This morning, I repeated in confusion.
When we kissed,
He explained.
I was talking about kissing you again.
Oh, I responded, feeling my cheeks heat up.
What did you think I was talking about?
He asked slyly. Nothing, I mumbled, turning my head away from him to look out the window.
I think I know,
He said.
I can see the thought of it turns you on. Either that, or it suddenly got very cold in here.
My entire face got hot as I crossed my arms over my breasts, but his low laugh sent heat that had nothing to do with embarrassment through my body. I shouldn't be reacting this way to him. He was an asshole and I should hate him. It had been bad enough when my attraction to him had been my secret shame, but now he knew about it. He was too arrogant already, and I shouldn't be inflating his ego even more and giving him more reason to mock me. He got quiet after that, though. When he stabbed at the button to turn on the radio, I got the impression that he wanted a distraction. It was what I needed, too, and it helped shift my focus to something safe. When one of my favorite songs came on, my distraction became enjoyment. I silently mouthed the words to Believer.
I like this song too,
Mason remarked.
and this band.
You do? I asked in surprise. I hadn't ever imagined him liking this kind of music. Maybe something with a pounding, sexually charged beat. but not the introspective, emotionally infused lyrics of Imagine Dragons. Also, he was so callous and quick to judge that I couldn't imagine him being any kind of a believer.
Yeah,
He said.
they're good.
Have you ever seen them in concert? I queried curiously, interested in this unforeseen side of him.
No,
He replied.
I had no one to go with. Have you been to their concerts?
No one to go with? I exclaimed. I'm the one who had no one to go with. You've got tons of friends and all your girlfriends. He grimaced.
My girlfriends wanted to see boy bands and Taylor Swift. As for my friends, I have no idea what their taste in music is, and I wasn't about to go to a concert with a guy anyway.
I rolled my eyes. There's nothing wrong with going to a concert with your buddies. I didn't know you were so worried about your image, and you could think of someone besides yourself for a change and make your girlfriends happy.
Oh, I made them happy,
he said smugly. I felt a stab of jealousy at his implied meaning, and it pissed me off that I envied them for getting to be with him in an intimate way. I love Taylor Swift, I lashed out at him. I bet Josh will take me to see her. He'll be the best boyfriend ever.
You are not going out with Josh,
he stated, his tone cold and hard rather than angry and provoked as I had anticipated.
You are my girlfriend, Ella. Only mine.
He glanced at me then, and I saw the intensity in his eyes that was missing from his voice. Yours? I sneered. I don't think so. You can't treat me like crap for years and then expect me to be your girlfriend. Just because I was stupid enough to give you my first kiss doesn't mean that you own me. I'll go out with anyone I want, and you can't stop me. There was silence for a moment, and I thought he was too frustrated by my rejection to speak. He had probably never been rejected before in his life, and I felt some measure of revenge at being the first one to do it.
That was your first kiss?
Oh, shit. I shouldn't have told him that.
You saved that for me?
He marveled, the tone of his voice matching the look in his eyes when he glanced at me again. I didn't save it for you, I retorted. I didn't have a chance to kiss anyone else. You scared all the guys away from me, so don't act so damned surprised.
There was middle school,
he said,
before I convinced my mom to move here. A girl as beautiful as you. I know guys had to be tripping all over themselves to go out with you. And even since high school, you could have met someone outside of school. I can't control everyone who comes into contact with you. So the fact that you saved everything for me.
I so didn't want him thinking that. I didn't save crap for you, I snapped at him. Don't think that you're getting anything else, because that's not happening. I'm just here to get my journal back. If you actually give it back to me, like you said.
Of course,
he replied.
I promised I'd return it to you.
I had my doubts, but I waited to see if he would renege on that promise. When we arrived at the restaurant, he parked the car and pulled my journal out of his backpack in the back seat. When I excitedly tried to take it from him, he reminded me that he said he'd give it to me after dinner. Holding it in one hand, he took hold of my hand and proceeded to act like we were on a real date. He held my hand as he walked toward the entrance, and I realized why that seemed so different. Besides the fact that he hated me. I had never seen him holding hands with any girl before, not with any of his girlfriends, ever. In fact, now that I thought about it, I had never seen him with an arm thrown over his girlfriend's shoulders or around her waist, the way boyfriends usually touched their girlfriends in casually affectionate ways. Unless he was making out with one of his girlfriends in the hallway, he didn't show any interest in her. Maybe that was why his relationships always ended after a few months. I imagined that the girl would become frustrated with the lack of romance and affection. Now here he was, looking like we were going to prom together, escorting me into the restaurant in a tux and pulling out my chair for me like a gentleman. It irked me, and I glared at him after the waiter took our drink orders.
What?
He asked in response. You kept me from this, I replied. Going out on dates, dances, all of it.
I did,
He acknowledged.
but I kept you from a lot of crap, too. Drunk idiots, cheating boyfriends, players, and worse.
Don't act like you did it for my benefit, I retorted. You wanted to make me miserable.
Maybe,
He allowed.
but there was more to it. I didn't want you going out with those guys.
Are you saying that you were jealous? I demanded.
Yeah,
He admitted.
I couldn't have you, and I didn't want them to have you either.
His admission of selfishness should have increased my resentment toward him, but it had the opposite effect. His reluctance to give me up to another guy indicated that he felt possessiveness toward me and wanted me for himself. That meant that he didn't hate me, because he wouldn't have been able to stand me if he did. It was the same way I felt about him. I didn't hate him, even though logic dictated that I should. Feeling suddenly shy, I looked down at my menu. Almost all the choices sounded appetizing because I was getting hungry after skipping lunch. Since Mason had insisted on taking me out to dinner, I decided to make him regret it, so I got the expensive filet mignon. He didn't react to my choice, and he ordered a porterhouse steak for himself. When the waiter left, Mason opened my journal and read my poem, Elusive.
The perfect moment. Happiness in a smile. Heart lifting with joy. The weight of the world falling away. Childhood innocence regained. Simple, perfect, elusive.
He looked up at me.
Tell me about this one. What was this perfect moment that brought you joy?
It wasn't mine, I answered.
Whose was it?
He prodded after I fell silent. Someone I know, I replied evasively.
Who?
He demanded. No one you know, I told him.
But who is this person to you?
He questioned insistently.
Friend? Family?
Friend, I said, reluctant to reveal too much.
Guy or girl?
None of your business, I snapped in exasperation.
Tell me or you won't get this back,
he threatened, lifting my journal for emphasis. That wasn't the deal, I complained. You said you'd give it back if I went to dinner with you.
And if you tell me about these poems.
I wondered why he cared. It was odd that he wanted to know the inspiration for my poems. Except for the one about him, none of them were embarrassing subjects that he could use against me. I had just hedged on this one because it was something he wouldn't understand. Deciding that I didn't care if he belittled it, because he couldn't affect how special it was to me, I told him. It's about the girl I mentor as a big sister. He sat back in surprise.
You volunteer with kids?
Yeah, I threw out like it was no big deal. I've got lots of free time since you sabotaged my social life. He studied me with a contemplative look.
You could have spent that time doing anything else. Volunteering isn't usually the first thing to come to mind when people are bored.
I shrugged, feeling no compunction to explain to him something he could never understand. He was too self-centered to know how wonderful it felt to do something nice for someone else. How making someone else happy was its own reward. I wasn't actually a formal volunteer, but I had befriended a younger girl I saw often at the YMCA, where I went swimming and played volleyball. Zoe seemed lonely as she watched other kids playing together in the pool, so I had approached her and asked if she knew how to swim. We had spent an hour having fun together in the pool, and I had gotten to know her as we spent more time together over the past year and a half. Her mom had taken to referring to me as Zoe's big sister, and I liked feeling like I was. So much so that I took her out for ice cream and other places outside of hanging out with her at the Y.
You said she's a kid?
Mason queried. Yeah, I replied. She's 14.
So, you feel like you've regained your childhood innocence with her?
He questioned. I shrugged, not wanting to elaborate that I had been referring to Zoe's innocence in that poem. She had been through a lot and carried more concerns on her shoulders than most people her age. It was great to see those fleeting moments when she could let go of everything and just be a kid.
"Talk to me,"
he snapped in annoyance.
"I want to know about these poems."
"Why?" I questioned. This whole thing was completely out of character for him, and I couldn't figure out his angle. What could he possibly get out of this?
"I have my reasons,"
he said, turning to another page in my journal.
"Is this one about her too? In visions of imagining, she delights in everything she sees. Playfully, summer's breeze shifts her pretty frock around her knees. A cute boy gazes soulfully into her wide blue eyes, but vibrant butterflies are the recipients of her sighs. She walks in enchanted reverie through the beauty her mind has revealed, unaware in her innocent wonder that she is the loveliest flower in this field."
He glanced up from the journal and gazed at me with a look I had never seen on his face before. It held warmth, and I was able to bask in it for a brief moment before it waned. Mistrust replaced it as he waited for my answer.
"Well, who's it about?"
he prompted. "A video," I told him.
"A video?"
he repeated, in a tone that made it sound like it was something dirty. I flushed in embarrassment, although it was as sweet and innocent as could be. "My favorite video. It's called Dream."
"Show me,"
he demanded. I pulled up the clip on my phone and handed it to him. The lovely music played softly as he watched it, and I felt odd about sharing this with him. I hadn't even shown it to Addison when I had thought that she was my friend, because I had instinctively known that she wouldn't appreciate its enchanting charm. If it wasn't sexy or popular, she wasn't interested. So what was I doing here showing it to Mason? None of this fit in with his callous and disdainful nature at all.
"Your poem matches it perfectly,"
he told me, as his gaze lifted to fix an assessing look on me like he was reevaluating me. His scrutiny unsettled me because I couldn't pinpoint what it was about. I didn't know how to react to it, and I fidgeted nervously as my gaze shifted away from his.
"Are you really this sweet?"
he asked, and my stomach dipped at the warmly sensual sound of his voice as it drew my attention back to him. The potent look in his eyes took my breath away. It became heated as I stared at him.
"I'm going to find out,"
he said, making it sound like a sexual promise. Heat flared within me, flushing my cheeks again. Fire sparked in Mason's hot gaze as he watched my response, and he leaned forward as he held my phone out to me.
"I can't wait to taste how sweet you are."
Blazing heat turned my face scarlet at the implied meaning of those words, and I hastily grabbed my phone and dropped my gaze in mortification. What he was hinting at seemed too perverted to even imagine in my fantasies, and the mere mention of it was beyond embarrassing. Unable to handle it, I scrambled out of my chair and rushed off in search of a restroom. After locating it, I went in and was relieved to find it empty. Standing by the sinks, I looked at myself in the mirror and saw that my face was indeed as red as I thought. Out of all the embarrassment I'd experienced because of Mason recently, this had flustered me the most. Maybe it was because I had been hungover and not able to muster the energy to be thoroughly embarrassed when he showed me my naked picture. During the humiliation while cleaning his house in lingerie, I had been plotting revenge against him. Now, however, there was nothing to distract me from my embarrassment. No misery nor antagonism. My mind halted right there on that thought. No antagonism between Mason and me. That was why I had been thrown so off kilter and why I was losing my head. Now that I was away from him and could think clearly, I realized what he was doing. He had dropped the hostility immediately after discovering that I had written an erotic poem about him. It had nothing to do with the rest of my poems. He was just feigning interest in them in order to get me to drop my guard and sleep with him. It was all part of his seduction, and I was a fool for succumbing to it. I needed to remember what kind of person Mason was and all the rotten things he had done. Just because he showed up in a tuxedo didn't mean that he had suddenly become a gentleman. I had learned long ago that he was no Prince Charming. He was cold, calculating, and ruthless. I wouldn't allow myself to fall prey to his current scheme. How much more of a perfect plan for revenge could he come up with than to get me to have sex with him? Then he could prove once and for all that I was just like my mother. I imagined him gloating, and it strengthened my resolve against him. I wouldn't allow him to shame me again. As humiliating as the picture had been, I had gotten off relatively unscathed. He had only deleted it to protect himself, and because he had come up with an even more devious plan. I could blame Addison for getting me drunk and Mason for taking that picture, but I would have no one but myself to blame if I gave up my virginity to him. It would be the ultimate revenge for him to actually make me feel like trash that he used and threw away. I wouldn't let that happen. With my head held high and my eyes full of steely determination, I returned to the table just as the waiter was bringing our meals out. Taking my seat, I kept my focus on the appetizing food. Mason waited until we were alone again before making a sexual innuendo about dessert. I just gave him a haughty look of contempt and started cutting into my filet mignon.
"You're not blushing,"
he remarked.
"You were so worked up earlier. Is that why you ran off to the bathroom? To relieve the pressure?"
I glared at him. "The only pressure I feel is to hold back from stabbing you with this knife. So shut the hell up and eat your food so we can get out of here."
"So eager to be alone with me?"
he queried. "Eager to be rid of you," I retorted. "I just want my journal back, and then I want you out of my life. From now on, I want you to leave me the hell alone. You got that?" He responded with an amused smile.
"Eat your food, Ella."
I wanted to shove the plate from me in defiance, but the delicious smell was making me too hungry. It tasted just as good as it looked and smelled, and I enjoyed every last bite of it. Sitting back after the satisfaction of a good meal, I saw that Mason was also done eating. He smirked when the waiter asked if we wanted dessert, but he politely declined. After he paid the check, he handed me my journal. Feeling mollified, it didn't occur to me to ask for my poem back until we were driving away from the restaurant.
"No,"
Mason said with his eyes on the road. "You promised," I protested.
"I promised to give you your journal back, and I have. That was the deal."
"That poem is part of it," I argued. "You took it with the journal. Give it back. It's mine."
"Clearly,"
he acknowledged.
"It's written on the back of your homework assignment with your name on it. You have such nice handwriting. I'm sure that everyone would agree."
My grip on my journal tightened. He had given me back my harmless personal items and was threatening to expose the only one that would humiliate me. Unlike the picture, however, it wouldn't get him in trouble. He could just stand back and laugh while people made fun of me with my own words. He began to quote them to me, and rage boiled up within me. "Bastard!" I yelled, and flung my journal at him. "Holy shit!" he shouted as he swerved into the curb before straightening the wheel.
"Are you fucking crazy?"
"If I am, it's because you're making me crazy," I railed at him. "Stop with this blackmail bullshit."
"Nobody said anything about blackmail,"
he replied, regaining his composure frustratingly fast.
"I just think that people would enjoy your poetry. I know that I do."
"What do you want?" I snapped at him.
"You,"
he answered.
"And I know that you want me too."
"You're not blackmailing me into having sex with you," I retorted. "I don't care what you show anyone. I'm not going to—"
"Did I blackmail you into kissing me?"
he interjected.
No, Ella. You kissed me because you wanted to, and we'll have sex when you want to. I wouldn't try to coerce you into sex if you tell me no.
Then why are you threatening to show everyone my poem? I demanded.
Because I won't let you break up with me, he said. We won't do anything physical if you don't want to, but you're my girlfriend.
I regarded him suspiciously. Nothing physical? I just pretend to be your girlfriend?
There's nothing pretend about it. You are my girlfriend, Ella. That means we go on dates, and you don't date anyone else. We'll just hold off on the physical stuff until you're ready.
Then you'll be waiting a long time, I told him, because I won't ever have sex with you. No kissing either, I added. And if I'm not allowed to date anyone else, then neither are you. He glanced over at me with a smirk.
Sure, Ella. I won't date anyone else. I know how jealous you get.
I'm not jealous, I huffed. I could care less who you date, but you're not putting your double standard on me. You're not getting away with screwing around and expecting me to be saving myself for you.
But you have saved yourself for me,
he said in a sexual tone that made my stomach dip again.
Haven't you, Ella?
Denying it would be a lie, since I had never wanted anyone else. I resented him for that, even as the way he spoke those words brought back the heat that had been simmering beneath the surface of my skin. It spread straight down to my core as he spoke.
You've been waiting for me to claim what's mine.
His overly confident assertion should have infuriated me instead of increasing the ache between my legs. I wanted to feel his touch so badly, and my anticipation was almost painful as I waited for him to act on his statement. When he parked his car beside mine and looked at me with a smoldering gaze, I expected him to try to kiss me. Feeling slightly dazed as I watched him get out of the car, I was slow to react and was still strapped in my seat when he opened my door and offered me his hand. Nervous excitement fluttered through me as I unbuckled my seatbelt and placed my hand in his to let him tug me toward him. He allowed the expectation of a kiss to build between us before beginning to lean forward with deliberate slowness. Closing my eyes in anticipation, the wait became excruciatingly intense for me when I felt his warm breath ghosting over my lips. After a prolonged moment, during which the tingling sensation increased with the tantalizingly close proximity of his mouth to mine, he very lightly ran his tongue over my bottom lip. A moan escaped between my shallow breaths at the torturously brief but exquisite contact.
That's what I was talking about,
Mason said. I opened my eyes and saw that he had taken a step back out of my personal space and was watching me with a smug smirk on that mouth I craved to feel on mine. Realization seeped in through my haze of lust that I had allowed my hormones to take over again. A blush crept over my face at the knowledge that Mason was aware of his power over me and was laughing at me for it.
I would have kissed you, but you insisted on no kissing. Have you changed your mind?
He asked slyly. Fuck you, I retorted.
Whenever you're ready,
he replied.
We should go somewhere private, though.
I spun around and grabbed my car keys out of my purse so that I could get the hell out of there. He continued to talk as I yanked open the car door and quickly plopped down into the driver's seat.
Aren't you coming to my house?
He taunted.
We'll be alone, and you can be as loud as you want. If you moan like that just from me licking your lip, just imagine how you'll moan when I lick your...
I slammed the door to block out his voice and thrust the key into the ignition. Throwing it into drive immediately after starting the engine, I swerved recklessly out of the parking lot in front of a car that blared its horn at me. I was so pissed off at him, and myself. Why couldn't he leave me alone? And why was I so damned attracted to him? It was all kinds of twisted and wrong, but I had never stopped wanting him. My resolve not to succumb to my desire hadn't lasted past the walk out to his car. I would have let him kiss me again, and it burned me that he had been the one to refrain. I had lost my head while he had been in complete control the entire time, and he had mocked me for it. Never again, I swore to myself. Mason would never get another chance to shame me like that again. I might be forced to keep him close, but I wouldn't forget that he was my enemy.